And welcome, welcome, welcome. This is Peter Winnick. I'm the founder and CEO of Thought Leadership Leverage. And you're joining us today on the podcast, which is Leveraging Thought Leadership. And today, my guest is Geoff Hughes. Geoff is a serial entrepreneur. He does a lot in the online course space. He does a lot in terms of enabling and teaching and helping entrepreneurs take it to the next level. He's got a book, which is called The Habits of the Top 1%. And he's got a little bit of a different take on the world than a lot of folks that we work with. So I thought it'd be interesting to have him on. So welcome aboard, Geoff.
Thanks for having me on, Pete.
Cool. So tell me a little bit about sort of Geoff World, if you will, sort of how the pieces connect and what you focus and how you take your ideas and content and life story and such and productize that to help others.
Yeah, I guess the best way to explain, I give a little bit about my background. I'm a high school dropout, and when you say the word serial, I was the serial worst employee ever. I basically went from job to job to job to job to job to job to job.
And I'm assuming when you say that, not getting promoted to the next level, probably being asked to leave more often than not is what that sounds like.
Yeah, I was either asked to leave more often than not, or I sort of pushed them to push me out
Right.
by constantly wanting more and more and more.
So we'll call that
And
an employee from hell, right?
it's funny that you say that because that's exactly what I was. I was literally the employee from hell, and and
We've all either had them or been them. So,
yeah, and and I'll be quite honest with you when I say employee from hell, because I was also the employee from heaven, because I produced phenomenal in sales. So
right,
it was
right.
it was. I guess for them, it's like, oh my gosh, we're getting rid of our top sales guy, our top performer. But I was also toxic to the environment as well and the culture. So
Well, it's interesting that you say that because the area in the corporate world where they look away more often than not or for longer than they should is sales, because there is culturally in some organizations the justification of he's a performer. If you're a low performer and you're an off the charts pain in the, fill in the body part, that's an easy decision, right? But when you're an off the charts wild man or nuisance or whatever, and you put the numbers on the board, you get to stay a little bit longer in many cases.
yeah, and I mean, so much so that some of them would actually even have me come back because their numbers fell off, and and I had, and funny or not, I'd been demoted from positions, then moved to management, fired, then brought back to companies because I performed that well in sales.
Sounds like corporate rebounding. That's a new thing,
It was
right?
corporate, yeah. I mean, it was. I could only imagine what it would be like to manage me in those times, and when they got their checks or bonuses, they were like, yes, and then when they had to deal with me, they were like, oh my god,
Yeah, right.
what is this? Um,
So what did you do with that? So you turned that into what? So you took all that experience. Obviously, you learned stuff along the way. And what have you turned that into?
yeah, so my last job was selling yellow page advertising, of all things. It would have been the equivalent to their competitor. They were called Cam Pages.
By the way, if you're under 30, Google that. We actually used to have to look up phone numbers in these big books that weighed 40 pounds, and people would sell advertising. So that might, if people don't understand what he's
Yeah,
talking about, it's a thing. It was a thing.
yeah, exactly. And that was seven, yeah, it was about 7, maybe 8 years ago. I was like 34, 35 years old. And same MO, how you show up one way is how you show every way. I was top performer. I was getting the most new business in the world. I don't know how I was managing to sell people full page ads or front of the phone book ads when myself, I truly never used a phone book. I Googled everything.
Right.
But they also realized that they needed to start morphing where they were moving, that eventually the phone book was just going to be non-existent for people to believe in. So they started moving into the online space and directory space.
Sure.
And for me, it was easier to sell the online stuff because I believed in it and I used it. So I was quickly the top guy, moving everybody over to the online space. They were giving me vacations, traveling. They gave me whatever I wanted, basically, because of the volume that I was doing with them. And I was the same way. The first time ever, I made more money than I ever did, $150,000 a year. And but I was away from my family all the time, and I had 3 kids. And I basically, writing was on the wall. Yellow Pages, our competition, went and bought us. I knew
Yep.
at that point that meant that they were going to shut it down. There's just no need to have two archaic phone books with pages in them. So I left right then. And in the time, this is when Groupon was sort of becoming like the big thing. So I thought it would be really easy to go and start my own daily deals company.
Okay.
So I had no experience in tech. I had no understanding. I just was like, okay, well, I'm just going to make this happen. And I directed a company to build me this daily deals website using, maybe there's some tech people that understand, Magento was my back end. And we built it. And I was getting daily deals. I was running around to businesses building it up, but I had no idea about processes, organization. I didn't understand any of that stuff. So, and I also didn't understand how to do business planning or managing or anything. So there I was running around doing it, but I wasn't making any money. So I had found an angel investor or venture capitalist to give me $50,000 and be a half owner of the company while I ran around and built this business. Well, I quickly found out that I was not making any money. We had a family of 5 to feed, and there had to be a better way.
Okay.
So I ended up knowing this guy that had, been buying cell phones from me years ago as one of my positions of working for in a company. And I remember one day I was on Facebook and out of the blue, I mean, he was an average everyday guy. He was actually a young kid trying to work for Freedom 55 and build a portfolio. And if anyone understands, it's not very easy to start building a financial portfolio from scratch.
Right. Right.
All of a sudden, one day I look on Facebook and he's in like penthouses and driving around in Lambos and Porsches. And I'm like, what the heck? And instant envy
Ah,
kicks over me. And I'm like, what the heck's this kid doing? And that stuck with me for a long time. And after my entrepreneurship and understanding like email marketing a little bit better, understanding the daily deals background a bit, and understanding that I had no idea what the heck I was doing, I decided to reach out to this person. And coincidentally, they had started a daily deals company in Vancouver, of all things. It didn't end up lasting, but I ended up meeting up with him and kind of getting a background more of what it is he was doing, because the word on the street was that he was just running around to internet cafes and cashing in, which kind of sounds a little bit shady.
just a
Turns out
bit.
it wasn't that. Turns out it wasn't that. I mean, that was like the third party story, the
Okay.
telephone
Got it.
game. He was actually doing affiliate marketing through email lists. So
Got it. So let's, but I want to fast forward to where you are now and the
yeah,
content that is in the book and your online courses that you're deploying out into the world to teach people how to be better entrepreneurs and avoid some of your pitfalls and mistakes. So what does that world look like?
absolutely. Yeah. So I quickly learned about the affiliate game. I ended up making a significant large sum of money, more than I had ever made in my life, my first year.
Right.
And I started on the journey of learning how to build an online business. And I got pretty successful throughout it. And what I started realizing was that I wasn't fulfilled with what I was even doing with that. And I started learning throughout my life how I showed up one way is how I showed up every way. So no matter how much money I was making, no matter what I was doing, I was constantly I was constantly not fulfilled. So around the ages of around 37, 38 years old, I had prior gone to some personal development, and I decided to deep into it. And at that time, I was having what you would consider a peak emotional experience. I was going through a divorce, and I decided to start learning more about it and understanding why I was the way I was. Quickly, I found out that something that was important for me was to basically figure out what was going to fulfill me, and what was going to fulfill me was helping other people. How are people going to, what was my legacy going to be? And
So let me just pause you for a second because this
yeah,
sounds like, and I don't know you, a very different Jeff than early rock star sales Jeff that was toxic, right? You go through this sort of introspective path of self discovery and discover a few things, and obviously there's some changes that were made. Right?
yeah, absolutely. Well, I started identifying who I was and
Yep.
why I was the way I was. And I guess the neuroscientist word would be a metacognition.
Yep.
So
Yep.
it was where I actually could see why I was doing what I was doing, and I was able to actually change the response because I was aware. And quickly I started to understand why 95% of the businesses, whether it be online or out in the world, were failing, because you couldn't be anything outside of who you actually thought you were in the first place.
Sure.
There's what they call a thermostat. And even if you got above it, which I did a lot of times throughout my career, I would always turn the thermostat down to back exactly with my own identity.
Right.
And through my studying and through my understanding, I was like, okay, so online marketing is the wave of the future. I could see it. I'm a firm believer that eventually almost everything is going to be automated. And I see a lot of people that are just following, or people that are struggling to build online businesses. I choose to build from scratch and use social media and so on. And I was like, okay, so what's the perfect formula to create change within them? And I realized that the only way that anyone was going to be able to build anything is if fundamentally they identified themselves as being able to do it themselves. So I came out with the book, basically the blueprint to the top 1% achievers of the world. And I studied biologically. I read book after book after book, took all the top quotes in the world and kind of like figured out what they actually meant in life. And we built an accelerator program basically for average everyday people, because I believe, similar to like I mean, nowadays, I remember watching now The Matrix. I firmly believe, as Bruce Lipton would say, that's a biography. It's literally, that is not a movie. And I decided that I was going to go full bore. I was going to show everyday people how to build online businesses. I was going to show them the proper way. I was going to get all the skills. I spent over $500,000 on my own education, and that's not traditional education.
Sure.
That's like getting mentors
Yep.
and reading books and going to personal development courses and taking everything that fundamentally were successful habits. And I created a program in place that would change the way you felt about yourself, but also have all the tools and skills in place to build an online business similar to what exactly I did.
So let me ask you this, Geoff. You've been this sort of lifelong learner. You dove in and made yourself the experiment, if you will, right? And then really dove into this stuff. So you are the consumer, the buyer of lots and lots and lots of these programs. If you pivot to the business side, not the content side per se. Then you go and you say, okay, I've got these findings. I've got this perspective. I have something to say, and I want to say it. Underneath that, you have to justify the business model. So could you talk a little bit around sort of the business model or models you've chosen and how and why? Because I think that's of particular interest to folks today in terms of, okay, so now you've got this body of knowledge, this expertise, you've made the investments, et cetera. Now you've got to get it out in the world, and there's 1,000 ways to do that. And talk a little bit about how you've chosen to get it out there from a business standpoint.
Yeah. Well, the biggest way to be able to, you need to get attention. So first off, you have to be able to get attention. So if you look at all the models out there, I also looked exactly where I was spending a lot of my time. I quickly realized, and a lot of people will be able to relate, that social media was the way to go. I mean, Facebook, the statistics show 45 minutes a day an average person. I think it's actually far higher than that, depending on the age demographic. So there I was like, okay, social media is where everyone's at. And quite honestly, it wasn't that difficult, the way the platforms are set up and stuff like that, to do it. And for me, and just like anybody, when it's not a big corporate, commercial, or it's like some big production, and it just looks like, some dude's trying to talk to me or some person's trying to talk to me, I have a bigger tendency to watch it.
So I would call it. It's got to feel real and authentic. This can't be branding or marketing a la Procter and Gamble or Coca Cola
a hundred
because there's
percent.
there's this resonance piece, right? So you know that the mindset of the buyers out there are you minus a year, 3 or 5 that are seeking something, looking something. It's more of a psychographic than a specific demographic per se. It's a state of mind actually, and so you're focusing on the resonance there.
Yeah, and here's the thing. So a lot of people get lost in this. They think that like big video productions, and believe me, I've spent thousands of dollars on professional videos, and I've gotten nowhere near the response that I did by just picking up my cell phone. My first video, I literally had a few beers in me and was on the back of my boat, and shot a 7.5 minute video, and I got the most responses I've ever gotten in my whole entire life. And that was my very first one. And I quickly realized that I needed to start talking to people where they were at. Where are they at in their life? I needed to get their attention. What were some of their pain points that was frustrating them? And really allowing them to connect with me, the person, and seeing that I'm no different than anybody else.
So I want to drill down on pain points, because pain points is something we do a lot of work with our clients, which tend to be a little bit more traditionally B2B oriented with the content. But we use that same vernacular around pain points because ultimately you may be the best at whatever it is that you have to offer: negotiation skills, teaching entrepreneurs how to be better entrepreneurs, sales development, etc. But unless the client or the prospect can recognize a pain point that they're in, they might not have the verbiage for it, or it might not be top of mind. And then you can show them that you alleviate that pain, the probability of a transaction happening are pretty low.
Yeah, exactly. So on the pain point, what I found was with most people, and even businesses, this goes for any businesses, your very first objective is they're like, okay, I want to make money. And I'll
Yep.
reiterate this, that's the biggest fallacy that you need to focus on. People have problems. So if you focus on a problem and that problem is a very big one, you're going to be remunerated much larger than a problem that anybody could do. For example, a cleaning company. That's a $10 to $12 an hour job. But if you're a doctor and somebody's sitting there with a heart attack, somebody's obviously going to pay them a lot of money to fix the issue. So, and this goes back to the pain points. If you focus on a problem that a lot of people have that not a lot of people are solving, money becomes no objective.
So walk me through how you discovered that, because entrepreneurs have lots of things that they need help with. How did you find the right pain points for you to say, those are the things I want to solve? That's where I want to focus. And not, again, I love the way you put it, not from because I can make a ton of money, but because that will happen. Like that was from a linear perspective, you found the right pain points for you to connect with folks. How did you do that? What was the process you went through?
Well, I mean, when you look, you just have to look at high failure points. So if you look at your existing business of some sort or other businesses, simply finding out what the high failure rates. So what is the highest failure rates, right? So I mean, for me personally, we know that startup businesses, 95% of them are going to fail within the first 5 years.
Sure.
That's a significant number. That leaves 5%.
Right. No one would get on an airplane if they were told 95% of these are not going to land nicely, safely, right? Nobody would do
A
that.
hundred, 100%, 100%. So when I looked at that, I'm like, okay, so that's a massive failure.
Yep.
And capital, having large capital to start a business, the fear of unknown, people just not knowing. So my program was strictly based around a large failure entrepreneurs. I mean, we hear all the time, rise and grind, gotta
Yep.
push. I don't believe in those philosophies, but I knew that failure in business was a very large piece. So if anybody's out there and wanting to, looking to accelerate their business, find the biggest pain point or the biggest failure in your industry, and then how do you overcome it? So how can I serve? And I use that word serve because it's very important. How do I serve? How do I serve these people to get what it is that they want out of their business and become really, they say niche, become that person, become that niche, and do it from a place of caring for the people rather than money. And what you'll find is your business will exponentially grow. If, like, caring for the people, for one, is massive, and obviously having the key to that problem and being able to fix it. I mean, everyone wants that, especially one that, is like in my industry. Everyone, like, I mean, statistics show 75 to 80% of people hate their jobs, and 55% hate their boss. Those are big pain points when you spend most of your life
In,
working
in,
for other
in your
people.
job, working for your boss.
Yeah,
Working
working for your
that.
boss, and let's think about it. I mean, they're dictating everything in your life. They're dictating when you can go on vacation. They can
Yep.
dictate when your days are off. They dictate how much money you can make. They
Yep.
basically say, listen, we have a ceiling over top you, and you have to live within these confines. And as long as you live within these confines, we'll give it to you. Well, spiritually, and you can do all the studies you want, that's not fulfilling. You want to be free. You want to be able to spend time with your family. You
Yep.
don't want to have a ceiling. And reality is most people don't know that they can actually create it. They're not given the tools. School doesn't give them the tools. Business doesn't give them the schools. I mean, nothing gives that tools. So, I mean, I guess my overall message is you're limited yourself by your own identity and the fact that you can't solve a problem out there. And
Got it.
I truly believe that you can and it doesn't take very long. I mean, if you just look at yourself, what are some of the biggest problems in your own identifying within your own business, and then just coming up with a model around it on how you've been able to. And the biggest thing is, once you identify it being a problem in your business, solve it in your business, become your own case study,
Yep.
and then go, okay, now that I've got this model in place, I'm going to build a system around it, and now I'm going to teach other people how to do it. You will become you will become like the professional, the guru in that niche, and build it around that model of solving problems.
Perfect. Well, this has been great. I thank you so much for sharing. I love the perspective of the pain points, right? And figuring that out and starting with that, because I think sometimes when money's great, we all want to make a ton of money. But if that becomes the only thing and you don't have sort of a servant mindset and you don't have the clarity around the pain points that your clients and prospects are in, it's going to feel contrived and inauthentic, etc. So thank you so much today for sharing with us your journey, which has been an interesting one, and what you've accomplished on the other side of it. So thank you, Geoff.
Thank you for having me on the show. I love it.
To learn more about Thought Leadership Leverage, please visit our website at thoughtleadershipleverage.com. To reach me directly, feel free to email me at peter@thoughtleadershipleverage.com. And please subscribe to Leveraging Thought Leadership on iTunes or your favorite podcast app to get your weekly episode automatically.